Do you want to talk a little bit about what the D.I.S.C is and why you think it's so important?
Sure. If you went back to the first Matrix movie, let's say, clearly it's a sci-fi thriller. But you have to ask yourself, was it fiction at all? Is the reason that that movie did so well and played so well that in fact it wasn't fiction but metaphor? And I think that there's some point at which Morpheus starts describing the Matrix in the film as a prison that you cannot see, taste, feel, or touch, or something like that. In some sense, the D.I.S.C works like this. We've lived our entire lives in a medium, and that medium has to do with the way in which our ideas are suppressed. With respect to journalism, I don't know. I mean, journalists have gotten very bizarre. You talk to a lot of them, they're very excited about the story, so that my experience with journalists is that you still have fresh faces who hear something and they'll tell you, oh, this is fascinating, it's fantastic, I gotta run it down, I'm getting all these partial results. And then very often you get this weird phone call, which is like, my editor said to stop working on it. Well, why? He said it wasn't of any interest. Well, it might involve drug testing, it might involve why we die. How could you say that this isn't interesting? Well, that's what he said. He said it wasn't interesting to enough people. Too complicated. Like, are you kidding me? It's not difficult to locate reporters who find the story to be of interest. That's not where the problem appears to be located. There is something above the level of the reporter that causes the story to die usually. And I think that the D.I.S.C is much more located in the editorial layer rather than in the actual beat reporter layer. One possibility, David, is that the editorial layer is taking into account different sorts of decisions. But the journalistic layer is still being told, go pursue the stories that are important, that are interesting, and bring them back to us. And then the editorial layer filters on something else, which is this going to be an inexpensive story to produce or an expensive story to produce?
The other stories that you've tweeted about quite regularly, and is sort of something that many memes basically kind of trying to prevent the story from dying, is the Epstein case. Do you get a sense of journalistic incompetence or journalistic malpractice in that?
It's a little bit like a pigeon constantly flying into some sort of obstruction. It appears to be in flight, and then as the pigeon gets farther and farther across the room, suddenly it's like it slams into some kind of a force field. Now, you and I know that that's probably a description of a glass wall. All right, there is some glass wall that is preventing the Epstein story from being discussed properly. Everyone's interested in it. The questions are basic, and there's a guaranteed story to write. Simply ask the most basic questions of the officials involved and print whatever comes back.
I mean, I'm hopeful. I mean, investigative journalism does take time. I'm hopeful there are.
You've got to be kidding. I'm going to shut you down on this. It's been over 6 months. This doesn't take that long to get a no comment from the CIA.
I'm not talking about the no comment. I'm not talking about the no comment. My point was going to be, given the amount of interest in the Epstein story, there must be some investigative journalists working on it. I completely agree with your points about the no comments. Like that is not being.
I'm sorry. It's not a question of some investigative journalist. We tripped over some enormous structure. We don't know what this structure was.
Yeah, I mean, my point on this is that I don't know where the media interest is, and it doesn't add up that there wouldn't be media interest given the huge desire for the story.
The really difficult part of the story, David, is that almost certainly we're talking about some kind of operation that was being run with knowledge of governments that may have involved pedophilia and was not shut down. And what I can't understand is what is it that is keeping some reporter from simply asking the questions that are on everybody's mind?
I'm feeling this sense of dislocation because I agree with you, there are these questions that are not being asked, and I find it difficult to understand why.
Let me tell you what happened. People started asking those questions, and they stopped. And that's what idea suppression is all about.
It's the sense now that even interest in this story kind of marks you out as a conspiracy theorist.
You know, I don't like the question.
But is that your sense?
Sorry. Okay. No. I'm going to attack the question. Would you mind?
Sure.
Okay. What do you mean a conspiracy theorist? So when I hear nightly on the news that maybe Russia is controlling the American elections and trying to prop Donald Trump up, are those conspiracy theories? When I hear that the coronavirus is in fact under control and then the market falls apart, is that a conspiracy theory? I mean, where are we in history that conspiracy theorizing is a privilege of the people inside the institutional class? No, that's incompetent. We have discovered conspiracies previously in the United States. COINTELPRO is probably the most disturbing conspiracy that we found within the last 50 years. In fact, conspiracies happen and you need to be able to go after them. So I think we should make a new rule. The next person who tries to use the epithet conspiracy theorist, we figure out what conspiracy theory they've been pushing, because frankly, everybody inside of the gated institutional narrative is hawking one conspiracy theory or the other. It's time for this technique of trying to intimidate people by using that epithet to die. And if you want to come after me, be my guest. Do it in print. Let's have some fun.